Looming over the boardwalk of Atlantic City is a massive hotel complex that once represented the rebirth of the glitzy casino age for the area. It was a resort complex known for luxurious appointments and celebrity sightings. But that era is long gone, and today the property stands as a tall, ghostly reminder of that prosperous past. What's up, guys? My name is Jake, and in this 98th episode of Abandoned, let's find out what happened here. This is the Atlantic Club Casino. In the 1970s, Atlantic City, New Jersey was undergoing big changes. The many historic buildings from the early 20th century, what many consider to be Atlantic City's golden age, were now being torn down. In 1976, gambling was legalized in the state, sparking what casino developers saw as a potential renaissance for the city. It wouldn't be long until flashy new casino resorts began popping up across the city. And in 1978, the now legendary developer Steve Wynn, the president of the then named Golden Nugget companies, had proposed a brand new casino in Atlantic City under his brand. One that was not all too dissimilar from the one in Las Vegas. On the site of the former Atlantic City Motel, on a small parcel of land between the boardwalk and Pacific Avenue, developers had planned for an 18-story hotel tower with 60,000 square feet of casino floor space. This was all along with various attractions and other amenities. So, with the plan approved by the city and the former motel now demolished, by 1979, construction was well underway. Ultimately, the 541-room Golden Nugget Hotel and Casino would open on December 12, 1980, at the total cost of around $160 million. The opening was a big deal for the city. It was the product of a big Vegas developer coming to breathe life back into Atlantic City, all in the form of a modern and sparkly casino amongst the beige and decaying buildings along the famous boardwalk. Within, the interiors of the Golden Nugget were described as a combination of Victorian opulence, seashore nostalgia, and Western gaudiness, which I think describes it pretty well. The vast casino floor was a glitzy labyrinth of all sorts of games, underneath ornate trimwork and crystal chandeliers. Gold, mirrors, and hints of Victorian charm through the lens of the 1980s glitzy interior design was the norm across the property, making for some pretty extraordinary spaces. It was all tied together with an impressive assortment of palatial suites, fit for the most high-level rollers. Even Frank Sinatra appeared alongside Steve Wynn in various commercials for the property, really hyping it up as a big deal in the world of casinos. And really, it was. Golden Nugget was a tremendous success, earning high praise with its lavish interiors and star-studded entertainment. But it was also very financially successful. The casino was the highest earning resort in the city by 1983. That was despite it being one of the smallest properties in Atlantic City. Wynn's ownership of the resort would only last a short time, though. The casino magnate, who was constantly in the press for both good and bad reasons, was already planning another resort in the area, though he was annoyed by the cumbersome red tape needed for development. This largely put him off from developing in Atlantic City, and ultimately, he would receive an offer from the Bally's Corporation to purchase the Golden Nugget for around $440 million. Wynn had already made a ton of money off the property, and he did indeed sell it to Bally's in 1987, who would then change the name of the resort to the Bally's Grand Hotel and Casino. For the next decade or so, the hotel and casino would carry on with operations. Still a favorite spot for many, though one that was increasingly becoming less impressive with the opening of other mega resorts in the area, many of which taking the spotlight. By 1996, the Hilton Hotels Corporation would acquire the Bally's company for around $3 billion. And this acquisition included their Atlantic City resorts. As such, Hilton would then rename the Bally's Grand to the Atlantic City Hilton later that year. By this point, the property had just completed a $50 million expansion, adding another glass tower, as well as building out the casino floor with the addition of a new theater. This brought the resort to a total of 804 rooms on site. By the end of the 1990s, Hilton would opt to spin off their gaming division as a new company called Park Place Entertainment. Atlantic City Hilton would now be operated by this new company, though continuing to license the Hilton name. Still, the resort continued to see great success, posting year-over-year increases in 1998, and in 1999, the property posted the highest increase in gross revenue in the entire city. The hotel would also increase their beachside amenities by the early 2000s, earning praise by their friendly hospitality. Ultimately, by 2005, the resort would be acquired for $513 million as a part of a group acquisition led by an industry vice president with the funding of the investment firm Colony Capital. The resort would be bunched in with Colony's newly created corporation managing their gaming properties called Resorts International Holdings. Within just a few years, these new owners were already looking for ways to expand the property. In 2007, they announced plans for a $1 billion expansion to turn the Hilton into a mega resort, adding a 1,000-room hotel tower, new retail and entertainment facilities, and of course, doubling their casino floor space. They claimed that this new expansion would add much-needed capacity. However, those plans were then thrown into peril by the next year. The 2008 recession was devastating for Atlantic City. With Americans and tourists all tightening their spending, money-hungry casinos were no longer the go-to spot for entertainment. Resorts across the city were majorly affected by this downturn, and no property had been spared, including the Atlantic City Hilton, which saw a nearly 23% drop in revenue. Hilton was by this point one of the smallest gaming halls in town, and felt the ongoing effects of the recession through the next couple of years. The Hilton would see more significant drops quarter after quarter, sometimes even plummeting as much as 79%. From the public perspective, it didn't help that executives were jumping ship, and the reviews during this time were pretty brutal. Guests were reporting filthy water in sinks and bathtubs, generally dated rooms, and even stained mattresses. By 2011, the property was in dire financial condition. Atlantic City Hilton was considered the worst performing casino in the city, and by this point, it had already been unable to make its mortgage payments and was clearly treading water. Hilton also seemed to have enough, as it was announced that their licensing deal had finally come to an end. As a result, the property would drop the Hilton name and rebrand to ACH Casino Resort. Rolls right off the tongue. This rebrand was pretty short-lived, however, as by 2012, they would rebrand once again, now to a much better name, the Atlantic Club Casino Hotel. Almost immediately, their owners set out to refurbish the resort, a way to freshen up with the new rebrand. However, the bones, and really much of the notable design motifs all the way back to the Golden Nugget era, still remained. Mirrors, gold, and faux white marble finishes were found throughout, even in the suites, which by this point were more of an interesting 1980s time capsule than actual luxuriously appointed escapes, which sometimes were priced as high as $600 a night. This is while the standard guest rooms, priced as low as $79 a night, were just about as plain as you can get. Really, the whole property was seen as a comparatively small, low-end resort that was hopelessly out of date. And of course, while some still loved it, perhaps from its decades-old legacy, most of the reviews put it in a less than desirable ranking. Following a failed acquisition by the online gambling site PokerStars, the casino, like many other properties across Atlantic City, were seeing a continued drop in revenue. Atlantic Club was digging itself deeper into debts with no way out. Time was now running out for the hotel. On November 6, 2013, Resorts International Holdings, the Atlantic Club's owners, had filed for bankruptcy. In the proceedings, it was estimated that the company was in between $10 and $50 million in debt. Atlantic Club was the company's last operating property, and soon enough, they switched to Chapter 7 and decided to liquidate everything. The Atlantic Club casino property was then sent to auction, with two major bidders coming through. Tropicana would purchase all slot machines and table games, as well as the digital player base information, all for around $23.4 million. This is while Caesars Entertainment would acquire the non-gaming assets, mainly the building itself, for around $15 million. This acquisition also came with the announcement of the permanent closure of the property, as Atlantic Club Casino Hotel would be set to close on January 13th, 2014. So, on a quiet and cold January night with very little fanfare, at midnight on the 13th, the doors were shut permanently. It wouldn't be long until Caesars sold the building once again. With much of the flashy gaming machines ripped out, the building was then sold in May of 2014 to a Florida development company for a reported $13.5 million. They elected not to do much with the property. Instead, they kept it shuttered and dormant. A year later, in 2015, a Pennsylvania-based company submitted plans to the city, which was then swiftly approved, to turn the former casino into a hotel and water park complex. The proposed $165 million project was a promising start. However, the sale never went through, and the concept fizzled out. A similar story would happen in 2017, when another company, hoping to revive the water park plans, also attempted to purchase the site. However, that deal also fell through. Okay, so a casino doesn't work, a water park doesn't work. How about a university? Well, the nearby Stockton University attempted to purchase it in 2018 with plans to demolish the main hotel but keep the parking garage. But of course, those plans also fell through. Finally, in October of 2019, a sale was actually made, this time to a New York-based investment and construction company called Colosso Atlantic City, Inc. Their plan, which was unveiled in 2022, was to turn the former casino hotel into a mix between a boutique hotel and luxury condos. The entire structure was to be completely recladded with blue glass, giving it an entirely new look. The condos, which are anticipated to start at around $750 a square foot, or around $2 million a unit, are to have a luxurious Miami vibe to them, according to developers, complete with modern appointments and floor-to-ceiling windows. Updates on this project have been pretty slow since the 2019 purchase. Developers claim this was due to a lengthy permit process. However, just recently, at the time of making this video, they announced that they have anticipated having the building reopened by 2026, which is very ambitious. They also announced their hotel operator, that being Hilton. Yes, Hilton is not only returning back to Atlantic City, but to the very building that once held its flag. While this was all happening in the background, throughout this whole time, this once iconic Atlantic City casino sat completely vacant and abandoned. With the original 2012 sign still high above the city, the casino hotel was clearly in a rough state. 24-hour security has been posted in the porte cochere, so very few people have actually seen the inside. Those who have been in and have taken photos show that the hotel has largely stayed completely frozen in time. The interiors have seemingly been very well taken care of, with power still on, and basically all of its original theming still in place. It's actually pretty remarkable how much has been left as it was the day it closed. Though not everything is still intact. More recently, images through the glass under the porte cochere shows the former lobby area completely gutted. Just the marble pillars, the still active chandelier, and some moldy drywall all remain. On the exterior, paint can be seen peeling all over, while the many glass panels have clearly endured a lot of weathering. Though along Pacific Avenue, the former vintage mural of life in Atlantic City, first installed when the Golden Nugget was built, still stands today, in rather good condition too. The same just can't be said about the rest though. Really, the whole property looks like a ghost hotel, something so frozen in time that it looks like the set of a horror movie. That's probably why it was used as just that in the 2021 film Army of the Dead. So with all of that considered, this new development is very welcome news. It's almost hard to believe that this is going to find a new use. Many resorts in the area have had very notable declines and subsequent demolitions. For a property as old as this one, with such vast amounts of funding needed to turn it into something that would actually work, it's hard to believe that there's a business case there. But in the end, this was a property that was something of a great pride for a booming city. It had many prosperous, financially successful years, and people really loved it. But its later owners failed to keep it up to date, and as its condition got worse, and as guests began to blast the hotel with poor reviews, the resort just dug itself deeper and deeper into debt. The 2008 financial crisis was the final nail in the coffin, and its ultimate closure and downfall is just an all too common case for Atlantic City. But now, there is seemingly hope for this once grand property. Do I think it's actually going to work out? It's hard to say. Obviously, they've done their homework and market research, at least I hope they have, but it's a little difficult for me to wrap my head around the idea of $2 million condos selling out, especially since the current condo market in the area has units that top out at that. It seems as though those prices and timeline were indeed too ambitious though, as just recently, in early July of 2025, the developers had dropped out. Proclaiming that the city is corrupt and citing frustrations in the permitting process, they're abandoning their plans and putting the property back up on the market in 2 separate listings. They're ambitiously trying to sell each tower as its own property, the smaller one of the 2 for around $55 million. So once again, this site is back in limbo, and for the time being at least, it seems that it will remain completely abandoned. If you enjoyed this video, do consider subscribing to this channel, Bright Sun Films. I also have another travel-based channel called Bright Sun Travels, and who knows, maybe one day I'll do a review in Atlantic City. My name is Jake, and thank you very much for watching.